Off the prosthesis, we've assessed the sleeve for holes. It does have a hole. He was not getting as much vacuum as he needed to. Everybody saw his residual limb in the other group. I'm going to take it back off to show you in a second, but I want to show you how to don a sleeve suspension, vacuum prosthesis properly applied. We put his liner on, and we've had multiple caps or half socks put on as well to try to mitigate the volume reduction over the course of time in his residual limb. And I will take it back off so you can see his leg, but we're gonna don it, and I want you guys to understand how to put it on, because that's critical for this next group as well that's now being watching this on video. So this last sock, or second to last sock, is going to get pulled up that much higher. These are considered half socks, and he has been using these for a while and is doing it relatively well. I'm trying to get the edges to roll up so that they aren't, especially right here, so that they are not a significant, dent into him, or a problem. Folding this down in order to expose the top border of this liner. The liner is going to bond with the sleeve. The sleeve also bonds to the socket. Around here, when we took it off, it was essentially this sock had crept up and was there. This sock had crept down and was here and was creating an air channel. Secondly, and that was losing vacuum. Secondly, what was occurring is we assessed the sleeve, and the sleeve has holes. Okay? And when the sleeve has a hole, right there, when the sleeve has a hole, that's a problem, that's a leak, that's no longer vacuum. Okay? So you can see that right there. Very obvious hole. So what we do to mitigate that hole is we put it onto the socket, and if we put it down onto the socket far enough, then it's going to essentially bond around it, and it won't be as much of a leak, if at all. Okay? So I'm going to take the sleeve just like it was made to be used. I'm going to fold it down a significant amount. I'm going to stabilize the prosthesis. I'm going to look for that hole real fast. Now that I've got it out of orientation. And I'm going to put it on the lateral side right here. So there it is. Okay? I'm going to grab it, put my thumb on it. I'm going to hook the front of the socket and put it over the top of the ears. I'm going to put it down onto the prosthesis. Now this is further down than I would want the sleeve, especially if it's a brand new sleeve. I want the sleeve as up as high as possible, and maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches of material down the back of the socket, so that you got a good bond where the sleeve is in contact with the socket to make sure that it's going to maintain good suspension. So this is not necessarily high enough. The other way to treat this is to get the hole that's here now up all the way up to here, would be the other way to do it. So it bonds to this portion of the liner so that, again, it seals itself. I'm going to attempt to do it this way to see what happens, okay? And I'm not even going to bring it all the way down right now, because I'm going to use the compression, the extra stretchiness and the compression to kind of hold this against the socket to bond that much better, and we'll see what we get. All right, so I fold that down to the back level of the socket. I make sure that the hole that's in here, there's a hole at the back of the socket, right here where the air is actually pulled out by the, way back there, a little black dot. Okay, see that little black dot? Okay, that little black dot is where the air comes out. You see it? Right there in the back. So that little black dot is where the air gets pulled out. It's not directly at the bottom. If we're directly at the bottom, we'd pulled out this right here, which was a little bit of fuzz that was directly at the bottom of the socket that could have plugged the hole, which would have
Is that like
ruined.
a one-way valve?
Yeah, it's a one-way. It is a one-way valve. When the vacuum pump is not working, there's a one-way valve in there as well that will allow it to be suction as opposed to vacuum. So putting the patella, right here is the patella, and we're going to push him down in there as deep as we can get him. Okay, and then I'm going to take the sleeve and I'm going to slide it up onto the prosthesis and up onto his thigh, and now I know that I've got this bonding to this all the way around. I've got this bonding to here all the way around, so I've got good suction there, or good seal there rather. And now we're gonna have him stand up again, nice and slow, and start to pump. Watch the air possibly get pulled all the way out. Keep pumping for me if you could.
Here you go, take that.
Does it feel like it's starting to grab a little better?
Not to me.
No? He can usually tell.
I don't think we're holding vacuum.
Okay. And I am in the process of making him a brand new leg.
We've got a couple new sleeves ordered.
Do we?
I haven't had any new sleeves in a year.
Okay. starting to pull a little bit. Back up a hair for me. Good. There we go. Good. It looks like it's starting to pull a little bit. You can see as he lifts up especially, you'll see the air pressure is trying to push in. So you're starting to see the dents. And what I'm looking here is right here. I'm looking right here to make sure that we're viewing the socket the best we can to assess for vacuum. And it doesn't look like it's pulling hard yet because it would be pulling in real tight on this. It would be pulling in on these socks really snug and pulling the air out of the socks. So as he walks a lot, it will start to generate a decent amount of vacuum, and it will generate significant vacuum if he is if we've got a good seal and there's no leak. So let's have a seat back. Okay. All right. So at this point, that's better than it was. Okay, we're definitely sealing a bit better, but it's not as good as it was when it was new and fitting completely properly. But I could jerk him. Yeah, I could jerk him right out of the chair right now because it's not leaking fast. If it was leaking really fast, it would go right. Yeah. It's going to suck off. But right now, it's got a decent grip on him. Okay, so that's how you put a sleeve suspension below the knee vacuum socket on. So when you guys review that and then go with the other group to see how it was taken off. I'm going to take it off in front of you, but that's how you put one on. So when you see one in your clinic, and it's a sleeve suspension BKA prosthesis, this is how a sleeve suspension works, where this is the part that's creating the seal, that's creating the suspension, okay? Even if it's just a straight suction, that's how one of these is designed. Dr. Morgan has the one with the seals inside, so those rings on the inside, and that's different. It doesn't have a sleeve on the outside, but it's still suction from the seals down, okay? What was the question you were going to ask?
When you were saying whenever he was up walking, you were watching for this prosthetic.
Yep, I was looking.
To get
I
higher.
wanted to see how that looks now. That looks like it's actually pulling because I'm stretching the air inside the socket. Mm-hmm. The air from out here is trying to enter because it's at a higher pressure out here, lower pressure in here right now, and that's what vacuum looks like. Okay, so when you're assessing a socket, this is what a well-vacuumed socket should look like. Okay, all right. So when you go to take it off, right? The amputee obviously has to wear something that's loose enough they can get above the top level of the sleeve. So when you're doing a sleeve suspension, one of the downsides of a sleeve is having to go way up the thigh like this, okay, with this particular type. So we're going to fold it down. What you're going to notice is he's got a good amount of grease against his skin, and that's on purpose, so it's more comfortable. Notice how it just popped off. It was kind of bonded to it. That's what you want to see. If the leg falls off, it's not tight enough typically. The other thing you noticed about his limb is it's pretty darn conical, very matured, right? So you didn't see the liner go on, so I'm going to basically take it off. So we got a 3-ply, and we've got 3 more ones, 3 or 4 more ones distally, okay? So what I would say, he is a 7-ply fit distally, a 3-ply fit proximally. He's utilizing multiple layers of 1-ply half socks in order to, be tighter at the bottom of his limb. When you stood up on that a second ago, how did it feel? And when you were pumping your legs and walking in place, how did it feel? Felt okay?
Felt great.
He's being nice to me. All right,
The reason you add those small socks is if you're feeling pain at the end of your stomp, it tells you, you need to add something there. And that's what I've done. I've added those 3 over time.
Okay. And you've had this particular socket shape for quite a while.
Quite a while.
Yeah. So, and he's used to it. He's used to wearing the socks. We're actually going to be making him a new socket. So we're starting from this point. We're going to be starting from this shape and making a new one that will fit. And we're looking for a fit that he doesn't necessarily require so many socks, but he's used to what he's used to, and we're trying to create a backup leg that's almost identical to this leg so that he can swap legs in and out. So if something breaks, he can go to his backup leg, and it walks almost as identically as possible. That is extremely difficult to achieve. From my perspective, a very hard thing to achieve.
So you just for my learning sake, you are going to build another socket. What's the reason for that? Because he's starting.
He doesn't have his backup leg is broken.
Okay. But
somebody
this
grab
one still
the other
appropriately
leg
fits.
that's covered that looks similar to this one. That's his old backup leg.
So you're not making him another leg because there's a poor fit with this one. You're making him another leg because of a backup.
We're going to improve a little bit and roll your leg to your left.
So he won't need so many.
Yeah, not as many socks possibly. And as you guys can see, if you get the camera right on top here, there on the fibular head is some significant abrasion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're trying to get pressure off of that.
Yep. And if you look down inside the socket has been adjusted significantly right on that lateral wall back on this side right here.
Yeah, there's
Some grinding marks where the socket has been adjusted to minimize the pressure on the fibular head, okay, on the lateral aspect over here. So that's not great. That discoloration is relatively new. It looks like it might be a hair follicle. It's a little bit puffy inside. So otherwise, a little bit of callousing right there. If you guys can look really, really close, maybe bring that with you right in on this skin right here. A little bit of callousing, so stage 1 there. Conceivably, he doesn't complain of that. The other thing that that's interesting about him, and a lot of amputees are going to have the same thing. Here is the incision line from way back when. How many years ago again?
50.
50 years, all right? So here's all this redundant tissue. And where am I touching you on your leg right now?
Go down at the bottom.
Down at the bottom? Is that in the front or the back?
With the back.
Right, so all that calf tissue is now at the front, and I was touching the front of his leg, which he felt is the back. Okay, so when I'm discussing this with the patient and I'm asking where they're feeling pressure, those couple key questions tell me where the pressure is. If I can't, I've got to know where the dermatomes are, right? I got to know where he's actually sensing things. So even 50 years out, he feels what he's feeling, right? So that is super important business right there. To understand. And you can see a little bit of discoloration at the bottom, good capillary refill, okay? And this tissue used to be down here like this and floppy. It used to be quite a bit more. So this is going down over time, over years, all right? I've been dealing with him, I've been seeing you for coming on 15 years too, over a decade, right? I saw you back when they had clinic downtown. At the VA clinic.
Yeah, I was thinking
while.
it's probably we've been working together 15 years or so.
Yeah, so it was basically a long, long time. And I'm the first person that put him in the vacuum, so it was changing, like you said, changing from that belt and strap suspension that went down to the prosthesis and a whole lot of pistoning. And I promise you, it was not a pretty sight when I saw him. And it was difficult. And then I had to convince him that vacuum would be a good idea, and I gave him the option. Said, "Look, if you don't like it, we can not do it." But you heard his testimonial.
Well, the first one they tried to put me in was that had that electric motor, and I was self-conscious about that thing,
buzzing.
yeah, buzzing.
Yeah. So it was a vacuum. Instead of the vacuum pump was not associated with the shock of the pylon. It was associated with a motor that drove the pump, and it was separate in the pylon. So at this point, we're going to put the socket back on so you guys can see again the donning of the liner. Okay, I'm putting it right up against his limb, very snug up against the bottom of his leg. And you didn't see it when it initially came off. It was kind of slipped down a bit, and this was more down here like that. So at this point, I want to get it on as far as possible, up high. And we have had to cut his liner at the top so he's able to feel the front of his, is that about in the right spot?
Yes, my point of alignment.
Okay.
That's how I line it up.
With his patella, and then we know because this is a completely custom-made, handmade liner, it has to be oriented properly. He's blind, he can't see the lettering on it, so we had to put some sort of indication in it that he could use to get his bearings on the liner. So, distal caps, right? I'm gonna put those on and try to keep those flush. Okay, another distal cap.
It's like a 3-ply half sock.
Right? Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It would probably be more easily done that way. So I'm going to try to pull that one really high, and the next one maybe a little bit lower.
Mr. Coleman, when you put the liner on with all the residual tissue, did you kind of reorganize that before you put on the liner? Or?
I did. I tried to place it a little bit underneath, a little bit more anterior, and tried to gather it up because the socket is made pretty much straight down. When I took the mold initially, I didn't let it droop, so I'm trying to collect it anteriorly a little bit. Yes, absolutely. Good observation. Okay, so I'm going to put those on, not quite as stretched as much. Just falling off. So yeah, difficult, and you can imagine. So imagine him doing it, right? Not having the visual cues of seeing that slide down. He can't feel it sliding down because it's over the top of the liner, right? So he has to do this himself. Does anybody help you at home?
No.
Yeah. So 100% doing his daily grind here, and what I'm doing is I'm really trying to focus on making sure the front of the socks, right? The front of the socks, and I'm probably going overkill for what he's used to having happen. But as he puts it on and gets into the socket, these socks are not rolled down, and he's not getting a problem. And I'm struggling. Okay, so he may not spend this kind of time doing what I'm trying to do right now, but I obviously want to do it as good as possible. So I'm going to do that. Okay, and then I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the sock, and I'm going to fold the sock down here, and it does not matter right now if this is inside or out. This particular sock does not have an inside-outside. It's pretty much universal that way. I'm going to take the materials. Mr. Taylor, you were telling the other group that you were having difficulty with bunching behind your knee. That's a lot of times where you had problems.
Well, in 50 years, yeah, that's where I've had the most problem. But my stump has continued to shrink, so I don't have that problem anymore. But a lot of my problems used to come from sitting.
Okay.
You know, and I had
Tissue bunching up
all
behind your
that
knee.
tissue rolled up on the back there.
Okay. Now, what you're going to notice out in the industry is that you're going to have these patients that have a big flare back here in the back of the prosthesis, BKA prosthesis. I don't tend to make my legs that way very much because anything that doesn't contact the skin is a waste. And it's if I stick things out in the breeze, it's going to cut into the sleeve and it's going to basically create a hole and it's a problem. It's going to leak. So when we go to put this on, we folded that down. We have this exposed, right? We have the liner, or the sleeve rather, now basically on the prosthesis such that the hole is in contact with the side of the socket. We've already done this, but good to do it again. We're gonna make sure where his patella is, right here, and we're gonna put the socket right up to that point, and I'm tucking some of his tissue in the back. I'm kind of helping not let it bunch up, just to make sure it gets in the socket well, all right? And then I'm putting a lot of pressure here, and then I'm rolling the sleeve up, okay? All right, so now we're gonna have him stand up and pump the leg and get back into it, just like he was a minute ago.
And he does this every time he
single-
puts it on.
yep.
He stands up and pumps
So
it.
back up about 1 foot for me. Yeah, excellent.
The pumping makes the vacuum.
Yeah, this particular design, the foot has a vertical shock pylon in it, and there's a bumper in there that has a vacuum chamber built into it. So every time he compresses, he pushes air out. Every time it lifts up, it expands the air internally and pulls air out of the system and expulses it. Keep going. So definitely looking pretty
Keeps you in
good.
shape though, doesn't it?
He does good, man. 3 miles a day at the best on a treadmill. When the leg isn't fitting good, what's that turn into?
One more minute, guys.
Well, I don't go till I break down anymore.
Okay. So he would push himself more than he
You
should.
get old, you heal slower.
Right.
So I try and stop before I've done damage.
Right. Okay. Hold still for a second. All right. So at this point, I would take the outer section. Obviously, it doesn't look great there. I would do a better job of like making this look better. If this is the scenario I was presented with, I'd probably cut the liner or the sleeve so that we don't have it all doubled up, and I'd tuck, and I would cut the sock that you saw on the outside. He wears a rubber band to keep his sock up, and then it compresses my foam over time, and it makes it look like that. When he originally got this, it was much more shapely, and it was sexier. But you can see that foam is a little different foam than this foam. You got who's picked this up? Everybody picked this up. Okay, felt the weight of this, right? Not light. He's dragging this thing around. This is a heavy leg. This is a heavy BK prosthesis. It's got that same vacuum pump in there. Let's tear it down real fast because that cover is removable. Reach